Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Today with this second part, we are going to start our question and answer series on Azure DP203 certification, also known as Azure Data Engineer Associate. To start with, today we will cover 10 very latest questions with answers that will take you one step closer towards getting the DP203 certificate. In the subsequent parts, a lot of questions will be discussed and answered. And along with that, I will provide you with a lot of Microsoft documentation, Azure data concepts, and much more. And friends, if you do find this video useful, please appreciate our efforts by pressing that like button and subscribing to the channel. And if you have already done that, thank you. Please also watch the part 1 of this series, as that will help you understand what is DP203, who should do it, and then it will make you aware about the exam details. Along with that, you will get important information on how to schedule the exam and what is the price of the certification. Not only that, we also covered vital information on skills measured, question format, exam pattern, and last but not the least, we discussed the best way to prepare for DP203. And for now, let's begin our part 2. So here comes our question number 1. The question says that you use Azure Stream Analytics to receive data from Azure Event Hubs and to output the data to an Azure Blob Storage account. You need to output the count of records received from the last 5 minutes every minute. Which windowing function should you use? Your options are session, tumbling, sliding, or hopping. The correct answer for this question is option D, hopping windowing function. Now let me take you to the Microsoft documentation, where we will not only validate our answer, but will also understand more on hopping windowing function. So this is the Microsoft documentation that gives you an introduction to Stream Analytics windowing function. And the documentation says that in time streaming scenarios, performing operation on the data contained in temporal windows is a common pattern. Stream Analytics has native support for windowing function, enabling developers to author complex stream processing jobs with minimal effort. You can also note there are 5 kinds of temporal windows to choose from. The first one is tumbling, then we have hopping, then we have sliding, session, and last we have snapshot. You will find all the details on these 5 kinds of temporal windows on this documentation. The link is provided in the description box. For now, let's concentrate on the hopping windowing function, and for that I will scroll down a little more, and here I reach to the hopping window. So the documentation says hopping windowing function hop forward in time by a fixed period. It may be easy to think of them as a tumbling window that can overlap and be emitted more often than window size. Events can belong to more than one hopping window result set. To make a hopping window the same as tumbling window, specify the hop size to be the same as window size. And here you can see Microsoft has given a very good presentation in a picture. And friends, if you remember the question correctly, we were to output the records received from last 5 minutes every minute. Very similar to that, Microsoft documentation has given every 5 seconds give me the count of tweets over the last 10 seconds. So it's very similar to what we have in the question, and that's the reason we have chosen hopping window function as an answer to this question. And with that, let's move to question number 2. The question says that you are designing the folder structure of an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 container. Users will query the data by using variety of services, including Azure Databricks and Azure CNAPP Analytics Serverless SQL Pool. The data will be secured by subject area. Most queries will include data from the current year or current month. Which folder structure should you recommend to support fast queries and simplified folder security? And you can see here there are 4 options given, each one with a different folder structure. Before answering this question, let's try to identify the keywords in this question. So friends, the first keyword is subject area. The second keyword is current year. The third keyword is current month. And these 3 keywords will help us identify the correct folder structure. With these 3 keywords, you can obviously make out that the folder structure should start with subject area. we can already see that the option B and option C does not fit in this condition because they are not starting with subject area. So we can already rule them out. They are not a valid option. Now we have to choose from option A and option D. Now you can see that option A is also starting with subject area, same as with option D. Moving on, we have data source in option A, and similar is the case with option D. Now comes the difference between option A and option D. Option A has now DD, which is date, and then it has month, and then it has year. However, as per the question, the subject area should be followed by current year and current month. And that's exactly what we can find in option D. We have subject area, then we have year, current year, and then we have current month. So that's the answer option that fits all the criteria given in the question. So the correct answer for this question is option D. And friends, if you want to learn more on folder structure for Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, then this is the Microsoft documentation. Here you can find all the information that you need to know. For example, you can see that if you scroll down, then you can see the structured data set. You can also read about the file formats. Then it also gives you the information about file size. Not only that, it will also give you the information on directory structure. And this is exactly what we were discussing in the question as well. You can see here, you can already see here that they have discussed about the folder structure. So please read this documentation to understand more on folder structures. The link as usual is given in the description box. And with that, let's move to question number 3. The question says that you need to ensure that the Twitter feed data can be analyzed in the dedicated SQL pool. Talking about Twitter feed, friends, have you joined me on Twitter? If no, then this is my Twitter handle. Moving on, the question says that the solution must meet customer sentiment analytic requirements. Which 3 transaction SQL DDL commands should you run in sequence? To answer, move the appropriate command from the list of commands to the answer area and arrange them in correct order. You must note that more than one order of answer choices is correct. You will receive credit for any one of the correct orders you select. So hopefully friends, you understood there can be multiple choices that can be correct and you will be given credit if you choose one of those correct orders. So here we can see we are given with 5 commands. First one is create external data source. Then we have create external file format. We then have create external table, and then we have create external table as select, and the last one is create external scoped credentials. Now friends, before I show you the answer, here is the keyword for this question. The keyword in this question is dedicated SQL pool. Now let me first reveal the answer and then I will take you to the Microsoft documentation to validate the same. So the 3 correct transact SQL DDL that we will run in sequence are: the first one is create external data source, the second one is create external file format, and the third one is create external table as select. And this is the Microsoft documentation where we are going to validate our answer. The heading of this documentation is use external table with Synapse SQL. Now first, let's understand what is an external table. So an external table points to the data located in Hadoop, Azure Storage Blob, or Azure Data Lake Storage. External tables are used to read data from files or write data to files in Azure Storage. With Synapse SQL, you can use external table to read external data using dedicated SQL pool or serverless SQL pool. Once again, I'm repeating, so pay attention. Here it says dedicated SQL pool. I hope you can link this to the keyword that I showed in the question. So let's continue with the documentation. Scroll down a little more and then you will reach to a section which says external table in dedicated SQL pool and serverless SQL pool. Once more, again, this is the keyword that we are looking for. You can create external tables in Synapse SQL pool via following steps. The first one is create external data source. The second one is create external file format. And the third one given is create external table. But friends, if you remember correctly, I have chosen the third step as create external table as select. The reason is given here that when used in conjunction with create table as select statement, selecting from an external table imports data in a table within the dedicated SQL pool. And that's the reason I have chosen the third step as create table as select. But friends, if you have another logic or another answer to this question, I would be really happy to understand your point of view and discuss the same in the comment section. But for now, these are the three statements that I have chosen as an answer to this question. Now let's quickly jump to question number 4. The question says that you have created an external table named ext table in Azure Data Explorer. Now a database user needs to run KQL query on this external table. Which of the following functions should he use to refer this table? Your options are external table, access table, ext table, or none of the above. The correct answer for this question is option A, external table. And this is the Microsoft documentation where we will validate our answer. And on this page, you have to scroll down a little bit more and then you will reach to a section to filter by virtual columns in a query, specify partition names in query predicate. Here you can see we have external table, so you can read more about the external table option and how you can use it in KQL language. Now let's jump to question number 5. The question says that you are working as a data engineer in a company. Your company wants to ingest data onto cloud data platform in Azure. Which data processing framework will you use? Your options are online transaction processing or OLTP. The second option is extract, transform and load, which is the ETL process. The third one is extract, load and transform, which is the ELT process. And the correct answer for this question is option C, extract, load and transform. The reason is that ELT is a typical process for ingesting data from an on-premises database into the Azure cloud. And that's the reason we have chosen ELT as the answer to this question. Now let's move to a very interesting question on Azure Synapse and Paraquet. Here comes question number 6. The question says that you have an Azure Synapse workspace named My Workspace that contains an Apache Spark database named mytestdb. You run the following command in an Azure Synapse Analytics Spark pool in My Workspace. And here you can see that we are running a command that will create a Paraquet table, which will be named as My Paraquet table, containing employee ID, employee name, and employee start date as columns. You can also note down the data type of each column. Moving ahead, the question says, using Paraquet, you then use Spark to insert a row into mytestdb.myparaquet table, which we just created here in the first step. Then the question says the row contains the following data. So here you can see we have employee name, employee ID and employee start date. The value for employee name is Peter, employee ID is 1001 and then we have 28th of July 2022. And yes, this is today's date. So welcome Mr. Peter to the company. Further, the question says that 1 minute later you execute the following query from a serverless SQL pool in My Workspace. What will be returned by the query? Here you can see the query. The query is select employee ID from mytestdb.dbo myparaquet table where name is Peter. And the options given are A 24, then we have an error or we have a null value. So you have to tell what this query will return. Now pay attention my friends, in where clause we have a column which is name. But on the other hand, the column name in the table structure was employee name. So that means what? That we are referring to a wrong column name. And yes, you guessed it right, this query will return option B, an error. Now let's do some questions on structured and unstructured data. Here comes question number 7. The question says that in structured data, you define the data type at query time. And you have to tell whether it's a true or a false statement. The correct answer for this question is that this is a false statement. So now let's figure out in which type of data we define the data type at query time. Here comes question number 8. The question says that in unstructured data, you define the data type at query time. And obviously the answer for this question is true. And a quick tip from my side is that the schema of unstructured data is typically defined at query time. This means that the data can be loaded onto data platform in its native format. And friends, if you are still not able to understand, let me dive a little more. I'm sure that you must have used databases like SQL Server database or Azure SQL database, or maybe some of you are coming from the Oracle background. At some point, you must have read about the employee example. Remember, in the previous question number 6, we created an employee table with columns like employee name, employee ID, and employee start date. So in this case, what we are actually doing is defining the data types at design time. So first you design a table, then you insert the data, and only after that you query the data. So this is more like a structured data. On the other hand, in unstructured data, you store the data in the native format. So let's say that you store a JSON file, and then only when you query the data, you define its data type. And this is what happens in the unstructured data. I hope that this gave you a quick understanding of the differences between structured and unstructured data. Let's move to question number 9. The question says that when you create a temporal table in Azure SQL database, it automatically creates a history table in the same database for capturing the historical records. Which of the following statements are true about temporal table and history table? Now let me first give you the answers, and then we will go to the Microsoft documentation to validate the same. So the answer for this question is option B and option E. The option B says to create a temporal table, system versioning needs to be set to on. Now friends, keep this in mind that system versioning needs to be set to on, because this is what I will show you in Microsoft documentation as well to validate our answer. Coming to the option E, it says that if you don't specify the name of the history table, the default naming convention is used for the history table. Now here is the documentation on temporal tables. Let's first understand what exactly is temporal table. So temporal table, also known as system version temporal tables, are a database feature that brings built-in support for providing information about data stored in table at any point in time, rather than only the data that is correct at the current moment in time. You can read a lot of information on temporal table in this documentation. But for now, let's validate our answer, and for that I have to scroll a little bit more. You can also understand here why to use temporal table and how does the temporal table works. Keep scrolling a little bit more, and then you will reach to a section which shows you a sample query to create a temporal table. Here in this query, you would have already created many tables, so nothing special on this one. But I want to bring your attention to this last line. And here it shows you that with system versioning on, and friends, once again I will stress on this point, it says the system versioning on. And that's exactly what I highlighted when we chose option B as a correct answer. Friends, do read about the temporal table in Azure SQL database. The link for the Microsoft documentation is available in the description box. Now let's move to question number 10, which is the last question for the part 2 today in our DP203 exam question and answer series. And here comes the question. The question says that to create data factory instances, the user account that you use to sign into Azure must be a member of. You have to select all the options that are applicable. The options given are contributor, owner role, administrator of Azure subscription, or the last one is right. The correct answer for this question is option A, option B, and option C. So we have contributor, owner role, and then administrator of Azure subscription. And as always, to validate our answer, I have brought you on Microsoft Azure documentation. And in this documentation about Azure Data Factory security, in the very first line, it says that to create Azure Data Factory instances, the user account that you use to sign into Azure must be a member of contributor or owner role or an administrator of Azure subscription. And those were the exact 3 roles that we have also chosen as an answer to our question number 10. So this brings us to the end of part 2. I hope you learned a lot of concepts and some of your doubts got cleared. Friends, it takes a lot of effort and time to find the correct answers, and even more efforts to find just the right Microsoft documentation to validate the answers. So please do not leave the video without liking and appreciate my effort and motivate me to bring more such content. And also do subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss our upcoming exciting videos on many more Azure certifications. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.
If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.